So the biggest problem that we see is that the business founder is always too involved in the day-to-day, and they cannot really find the time or the way out to start working on the business. We have the saying that they work too much in the business rather than on the business. And what we
Yeah.
mean is that, as a founder, your main role is obviously to talk with the clients, identify new revenue streams, identify new business opportunities. But as the business grow fast, and that's what we see always happening with digital marketing agencies, that the businesses grow really fast because there's a lot of demand at this stage, especially with the whole pandemic. More e-commerce businesses are, going online, and the sales are increasing. People are staying at home, etc. The demand for digital marketing agencies are also increasing. So yeah, we see that the business founders basically just get trapped, and as they get trapped, a lot of different problems open up. They start focusing a lot on the, let's say, front end, which is sales, marketing, etc. The operations get forgotten. So
The pursuit of excellence is something we're all striving towards.
I want you to focus on what you do best.
You need to have an approval. How many approvals? What are the steps?
It's really about listening.
If it's not documented, it's not done.
Thanks for tuning into In Systems We Trust, the show where we dive into all things systems and processes and hear from the professionals that are using them to change the landscape of their organizations every day. Today I'm talking with Erika Zeigyte. Erika is the founder and remote operations expert, as well as a management consultant who helps remote companies build high-performing teams and operations. Welcome to the show today, Erika. How you doing?
Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm doing fantastic, actually. First of all, because I came back to Europe and I'm back home, so I'm very, very good. Thank you. How are you, by the way?
Yeah. I'm great. Yeah, the sun is shining, as you can see. It's been a great day checking off things off the task list. So I'm feeling really, really good. Where were you?
I was in Mexico, so I think we were in a similar time zone, right? It's a EST. Yeah. And right now I'm back in Lithuania. And it's 7 hours ahead of Mexico, ahead of EST time zone. So I'm kind of wrapping up my day already. Well, you're just starting, right?
Yes, I am. And now you were in Mexico for, work and pleasure, kind of living there for a little bit. And meanwhile, I'm up here in Canada. We're just starting our spring right now, and we have like -1, +1 degrees right now. But, you were living it up down there, enjoying the nice weather, weren't you?
Yes. Actually, it was fantastic weather. It was +30 degrees Celsius. I don't know if you guys use Celsius. You use Celsius too, right, in Canada? Yeah. But actually, it's the same weather in Lithuania right now. It's like +1, +2 degrees. Very nice spring. Very happy to be back. Spring kind of makes you feel like the whole nature is waking up and you're like, motivated now to do things. But yeah, to answer your question, I was in Mexico just to change the environment, with quarantine and all the things going on. You just wanted to take a break, go somewhere else. Obviously, I didn't stop working. I was still doing the work as usual.
Yeah.
Obviously different times, but just change of scenery.
Perfect. Yeah, tell us more about the work then. Like you're the founder at Remode. So if you can kind of fill in the listeners on what Remode is, what industry you fall into, who your customers, and just give us some more background on what it is that you do day to day.
Yeah, of course. So Remode is a consulting agency. We help specifically digital agencies focusing on marketing or e-commerce. We help them build powerhouse backend operations so they can basically nail the scale, as we say. And we focus on 4 main areas. So that would be talent acquisition and development, remote leadership and management, goal setting and alignment, and processes and communication. So these are like the 4 main pillars that we focus on. And obviously out of that, a lot of different topics come out, a lot of different problems that we solve. But it all ends up being the back-end operations that we really help businesses build.
Did you exclusively work with e-commerce businesses then? And how did you arrive at that niche or decide to focus there?
Yeah, well, actually not e-commerce businesses specifically, but mainly digital marketing agencies. The main industry and the niche was digital agencies. But we found the potential in the marketing specifically because, there was a demand basically for the service. So a lot of marketing agencies reach out to us. Obviously, these days, when it comes to marketing, the word of mouth spreads really fast. So we got a lot of requests, and we just basically specify in digital agencies / digital marketing agencies.
Okay.
With some clients in the e-commerce and e-courses, etc.
Got it. Okay. And what does your background look like? Do you come from the digital marketing space? Have you always been in operations? And can you kind of fill us in there on what that looked like?
No, and no, which is very funny because my background is actually neuroscience, which is far from market. Well, it's not too far from marketing because it's psychology, it's, thinking process behind making a decision, etc. So I was actually studying neuroscience. After that, I went into project management in pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies. And then at some point I was like, I'm going to create my own business. And in order to create a business, you need to really understand marketing. And this is one of the things you really need to nail before you actually do anything. So I just looked for opportunity. I got into a digital marketing agency in very early stages of development. We were actually 4 people that stage. So I don't know, it was more like a hobby at that stage rather than an agency. And in a couple of years, we built that agency to almost 70 people. And 70 people and 4 million in revenue. So that was basically how I got into this industry. Probably that's also partially why we as a Remode, we focus and work mainly with digital marketing companies.
Okay. I want to ask how you did that. I mean, like you started working for this company. Sorry, you're working for the company. You didn't own it, correct?
Which one?
You scaled?
I was partially a co-owner, yes.
Got it. Okay. I want to know how you did that a little bit, right? Like obviously there was the marketing, that was, huge in the success of that. Then there's the operations, but there's a line on your website that said that in under 2 years, you were able to bring that business from, 0 annual revenue to 4 million. What did that process look like? How did you roadmap that? And how did you scale to, 70 people in that amount of time?
Well, a lot of lessons learned for sure.
Yeah.
It wasn't an easy process. Obviously, we always listen to the demands and what is happening at this stage. So we, started bringing people on board. We realized that bringing people is not enough. You actually have to also develop processes. So we started developing processes. Then we realized that with processes is also not enough. You have to get alignment with the team. And then, 2 years down the line, when everything seemed so smooth, the processes are there, the team is there, we realized that one crucial piece is missing, which was there at the very beginning but got lost somewhere in the fast growth, which is culture. So this is also something that you cannot just forget, basically culture and good management. So we learned a lot of things basically through less making mistakes and learning from those mistakes.
Okay.
And obviously meeting a lot of great people. Why?
No kidding.
Well, I left because I didn't leave fully. I'm still consulting them on, it's hard to leave something where you feel like a family and you feel part of.
Yeah.
So I'm still consulting, I'm still there, but my main focus right now is Remode, because obviously, as I said, from the very beginning, my goal was to create my own business, not just for the sake of having a business, but because I know that this is something that I'm gonna do in order to explore my full potential. And for me, I need challenges all the time. So, So that's basically, I'm seeking challenges, in other words.
That's great. What does a typical week look like for you right now in your role at Remode? It's obviously very different from the company that you came from. What are your responsibilities, would you say? What do you oversee at your company right now? And how do your team members fit in? Because you have a partner as well, correct?
Yes. I do have a partner, Leon. Yeah. So we actually at Remode, with Leon specifically, we really focus on productivity. So it's really easy to describe my typical week. Monday and Wednesdays are usually for Remode, for all the work related to Remode, marketing, sales, etc. Tuesdays, Thursdays are for client work. So that's when we really have client calls, when we focus on delivering the best possible results, basically providing services. And then Fridays are usually for self-development. So that's when we spend time reading, researching, talking, networking, whatever that is. So that's how my typical week look like. And and my role in the company is the chief operating officer, if you can call it, if we kind of aim to label the things. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of things that you're still doing because it's a small company. It's still in the early stages, and you basically do everything from marketing to sales to operations to just the management.
Yeah. I'm curious to know what does your relationship with Leon look like in a business sense? I'm a really big fan of Cameron Harold. He's the host of the Second in Command podcast, and you being a COO is that's kind of his approach, and he's written several books, double and things on how to grow businesses. So how do you and Leon complement each other? Do you get in each other's ways? Do you have clear points where you take over and where you make decisions, or how have you structured that in your org chart?
Yeah, we always say that this is a relationship, and every relationship requires some work, and it will always require some work as long as we stay together. And actually, this is something that we also teach at Remode, is how to identify team strengths and weaknesses. And that's Leon and I are a good example in this. For example, Leon is huge visionary. He is very futuristic, right? I'm on the other hand, I'm an achiever, maximizer, also futuristic, very competitive. So we know each other's strengths and weaknesses. So I know, for example, Leon doesn't like execution damage. Not that he doesn't like, but it's not his strength. And for me, on the other hand, it's a bit harder sometimes to see the bigger picture. It's harder to really see the opportunity when it presents itself. So that's where we really complement each other. And overall, the partnership is based on a lot of uncomfortable conversations that we have from time to time. And those conversations is basically every time we have it, it's like a turtle we have to jump over. And, we just pass that stage and we move forward. And that's basically how we open the gates to every new growth stage.
Okay. I can imagine, though, that, conflict does come up from time to time, in your processes, in your overlap, and in your, your own wheelhouse. Have you guys agreed how you, handle conflict, right? Because you both have your strengths, you both have your opportunities. Did you agree on those organically? Did it come up? Were there meetings? Were there, heads coming together? Like, what does that look like? And how do you guys resolve your conflicts internally without revealing too much information? Yeah,
we have this one rule. You don't go to sleep without resolving a conflict. Because, if you go to bed without a headache, like with a headache, let's say, or with a problem that's still in your head and that's bugging you, there's a high chance that you're going to start your morning, the next morning, also in a bad kind of place. So we always kind of solve the problem as it is. We use a lot of great tools, for communication, like Slack, ASANA, and all of these things. And we use Marco Polo, actually, which is very, very handy. You have an app on your phone. And sometimes, we go for a walk, for example, let's say, and we just leave Marco Polos to each other, and we really solve the problems this way. It's because we don't work in the office. We are also remote, and we do get to see each other from time to time, but it's still, remote work, and we just solve it on the same day.
Great approach. I want to get to the clients now, or, the prospects that you're working with. What would you say that, and this is a two-parter, what would you say is, the biggest problem that you find when you're coming into a digital marketing agency? What are the problems you're solving? What are the needs that you're filling for these agencies? And then the part two is, what does a typical engagement look like as far as approach, process, timeline? Can you speak a bit more to that?
Yeah, sure. So the biggest problem that we see is that the business founder is always too involved in the day-to-day, and they cannot really find the time or the way out to start working on the business. We have the saying that they work too much in the business rather than on the business. And what we mean is that, as a founder, your main role is obviously to talk with the clients, identify new revenue streams, identify new business opportunities. But as the business grows fast, and that's what we see always happening with digital marketing agencies, that the businesses grow really fast because there's a lot of demand at this stage, especially with the whole pandemic. more e-commerce businesses are, going online and the sales are increasing, people are staying at home, etc. The demand for digital marketing agencies are also increasing. So, so yeah, we see that, the business founders basically just get trapped. And as they get trapped, a lot of different problems open up. They start focusing a lot on the, let's say, front end, which is sales, marketing, etc. The operations get forgotten. So that's what we really try to solve with our clients, right? And that's what we solve with them. We actually build them high performing backend operations. And the typical cooperation with the clients, it depends actually. Sometimes it's really customized, really, hands-on consulting. Sometimes it's less engagement, depends on how dedicated the founder is, how much time they can dedicate on their end and do the work themselves. But usually usually it's consultations that we do with them. Can be weekly calls, but it can be workshops, can be, really us providing a lot of templates, etc. So yeah, it depends on a case-by-case basis.
And I can assume that, the level of execution would be different just depending on how big their teams are then?
Yes, exactly. For example, we had the client that came to us when they were 4 people. And, at that stage, they really needed our help and they needed us to be really involved in execution too. So we, that was like tier 1 client for us. But then we have clients that are like 10, 15 people and they don't need us to execute that much. So we do just weekly calls with them. And, we really provide the value. We, provide all the homework, the guidance, etc. And they just do their homework. We meet in the next session, we discuss, tackle another topic, and then, just roll with it.
Right. I want to talk more about, the owners that are spending too much time in the business, because I see that all the time too, right? Typically, businesses or, agencies will just stay in that stream for a minute. They're 1 or 2 people. They're natural born entrepreneurs and they're leading businesses and they're growing and they're scaling effectively. On the other side, and there's nothing wrong with this, but they're typically freelancers. They start out, as specialists doing something that they know really, really well. And then they start, acquiring clients and, filling their pipeline, and they naturally need to find other people to help them grow. And so there's this, kind of relationship with the work, to the work, I should say, where, they don't want to let go, or they know how to do it, possibly better than the people that they're hiring, and they stay stuck in that. So how do you make that change? How do you communicate the need for that change in those cases with those agency owners where they need to remove themselves to grow the business? Is there any pushback there? Do you have struggles there? And how do you overcome that?
To be honest, that's not something that we have to tell them. That your job as a founder of the company is to actually work on the business. They already know that. That's the reason why they come to us. They come to us because they're like, okay, I'm spending too much time. I'm working 18 hours a day. That's not sustainable. The difficulty is that, is basically letting go of control. How to do that? That's another topic. It requires a lot of coaching. It requires a lot of practice, as weird as it sounds, but it does require some practice to actually start delegating the work to your people. And then, usually why you don't delegate is because you don't trust. And why you don't trust? Because there's no good culture. So it comes back to, okay, it's time to build a culture. And how do you do that? And, it's not something that you build overnight. It's not something that you build in a month or 2. It does take time, because the way you build culture is basically when you have different situations, when you solve those situations and you show your people how those situations should be solved, and that you actually appreciate people and that you put people first, and that you have values in the company and that you live by those values. So it's a long process. Culture, I think, overall is a mix of not just culture itself, but also the management and leadership. And based on that, you just build a culture where the trust is the foundation, and with the trust you start delegating, and then the founder is able to delegate tasks because they trust their people.
Right. Yeah. That's such a good point. I mean, like, so many people forget or don't understand the fact that whether you think it or not, you do have a culture. The question is simply, is it a positive one or one that, is negative and, off-putting for people? So, really good point there.
Yeah.
I want to start talking about, your process and how you walk people through an engagement and even what your systems look like a little bit. And so can you speak more to the process? You come into these agencies, let's say they're 10 to 15 people. Are you sitting with the CEO and head of operations at that point and identifying the issues? Are you breaking out with the teams to kind of identify those issues and then figure out a plan to move forward? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so the first step actually for us is to do an audit. And this is, basically us trying to understand where you currently are at with your business. The audit is usually done with the founder of the company. If there's a COO, then we do it with the COO too. And during this audit, we ask like 40 different questions from 4 pillars that I mentioned earlier on. And we basically try to understand where the business currently is, where they struggle, where they are strong at. And based on that, we build a 3-month roadmap with the things that, needs to be worked on first, because that's the low-hanging fruits. And from there, it depends. It might be a one-on-one calls. It can be workshops. It can be one-on-one calls with the team members. And the process, again, as I said, is customized. It varies. Sometimes, as I said, it's just weekly calls. But usually it's based on the topics that we get out of the audit.
Right. We have a similar process where we approach it from an audit. We do typically takes a few hours, a couple of phone calls, and then we kind of take a look at the tech that they have behind the scenes, and then we move into more of a deep dive once we have an understanding of where we're going. In my experience, go on.
Yeah, and actually, I didn't mention that, when we do this audit with the 40 questions, we also do a short audit with the team. We ask them certain questions where they give a score, and we know this is how we understand what the team motivation score is, which is also very important because, this is the foundation for the whatever we're going to build. But yeah, you probably do something similar too.
Yeah. What I was gonna say is that like after this audit, I mean, we typically find that there isn't a lot to audit. There isn't they're at a point where they know they have a need for process. They know they want to implement systems, but there isn't a lot to audit. The questions, they don't know the answers to them. And so oftentimes, we're kind of like pre-qualifying them through that audit process. Is it the same at Remode where you'd get through a process and say, it's too early, you need to work on these things, come back to us in a year? Or would you start with them from where they're at and work with them through that process of systematizing and optimizing their business?
Well, we do have the pre-qualification questionnaire that we basically it's not always filled out by them, but sometimes we just do that during the call. We ask the questions, and when we work with the businesses, we really make sure that they are ready to take this challenge, because it is a challenge. That's them stepping out of the comfort zone and basically embracing for the growth that's about to happen. So we actually pre-qualify before we even go on audit. Audit is not something that we sell for the sake of selling. It's actually we do it because it's needed in order for us to know what is the next thing we have to work on together. So usually when you do the audit, at that stage, that this is going to be a partnership. We're going to work together. There's potential. Now the question is, where do we start? So that's when we do the audit.
Okay. And then you're bringing them into your framework so you know exactly where you're starting. Got it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Awesome. Let's talk about process documentation, because with a lot of this, like it's you going in, doing the execution, but you have a team that you're working around loosely. So what is the process of you documenting your SOPs look like around all your systems? So you understand it, Leon understands it. How do you break that down to your team? What is that process of documenting look like? Is there a culture of inclusivity when it comes to documenting those processes, and who really leads all of that within your company?
Well, we don't really document in the way of old style written SOPs. What we do is every time we see that whatever we are doing is going to be done the second time, we then basically templatize it. And you are very familiar with ASANA, I know that. We actually do a lot of processes inside ASANA. And our way of documentation is either you write it down in ASANA tasks and you build the whole process, step by step, with the description in
Yeah.
Asana, or we do Loom recordings. So that's the way
Okay.
we SOP things. Obviously, sometimes it does make sense to have a written format because things are changing fast and you want to update it easily. But with recording, it's a bit tricky because you have to re-record the whole thing. So I would say that the SOPing part looks like it's either Asana, an Asana task, or it's either Loom recordings. And
Okay.
who's in charge? Well, I would say I'm carrying the accountability here, but then there are people who are responsible, like executive assistant, operations manager, etc.
Okay. I'm interested to hear how you actually document those SOPs, because within Asana, and we know we both love Asana, there's no secret there. There are two kind of approaches that will take it ditto. We either we like to set up what we call the learning commons, and the learning commons has a few different projects in it. So one is like the break room. So imagine if you were in a physical space, right? You have your policies on the wall, your times when the meetings are, information on the company, HR is over here. So we have that listed out in various boards. And then from there, we have, everything around the tech that we use as well. So if we're using Asana, within that, we have various subtasks on the different areas that would be covered. So how we do project management, what our social counter looks like, how we do client engagement. Within that, we do write them out. And typically it's a mix of written and then, video recorded through Loom, same thing. Another approach is that we have, for certain clients that are at a different level, like more of a tier 1, we would have a larger SOP index, where by admin, maybe by billing and finance, client delivery, we have different sections. And then within that, it's all of our how-tos. And then those are multi-homed in most cases to the project templates, or to, again, the tech we use. And so that's how we really get around documenting, keeping it all in one place, because I really believe that the SOPs should live alongside the templates that are actionable. So when your team is working through things, they have a quick reference right there. Is your approach similar? Like, how are you using the structure of Asana to really build those SOPs? What does that look like?
Yeah. So for us, for example, we, let's say, have clients templates, right? How we approach it, for example, let's say there's a question how to onboard a client. So I understand in your case, probably you would write it down in an SOP, right? How to onboard a client, and then you would just link it to the certain templates, Asana templates. Yeah. So what we do is we actually build the whole process in Asana of how to onboard a client, with saying what needs to be done the first day, what needs to be done the second day, the third day, what you need to double check. And every time we have a new client, the person knows, let's say executive assistant knows that, okay, we're onboarding a new client. All I have to do is use this particular process, and then it's going to tell me what exact templates I have to create. So for example, they would create this client onboarding checklist, and they know, okay, now they have to create this particular project. They have to create Drive in G Suite. They have to, let's say, create a shared Slack channel, etc. So all of this becomes it's like a how-to, but it becomes in Asana tasks. So this is very actionable, and it's, for us, it works much better than written Word documents.
Sounds really familiar. Yeah, I think the process and all the things that need to happen behind the scenes. Yeah, I think it's pretty standard. I'm curious because with a lot of what we both do, right, it's about making the processes easier, simpler. And so how much automation do you use in your processes if you're specifically talking about client onboarding? I know for us, we integrate with HubSpot. So right off the bat, a lot of the back and forth, like onboarding emails, book your kickoff call, here's your homework, a lot of that stuff is taken care of with HubSpot automations. Do you guys have, automations or rules that you use within Asana to make a lot of that work simpler?
We do use a lot of Asana rules. We don't use that much the third-party, let's say, platforms. We tried with Zapier, some things and automations, just to make things easier. But I would say that we don't use that much automations outside Asana. However, we use all the automations within Asana, like rules, I don't know,
Okay, perfect. So with your processes, I know like a lot of what we do is obviously improving those processes. They never stay stagnant. Every time we go through a new project, it changes a little bit. We find out a way to do it better. And so would you say, like you said earlier, are you responsible for improving those processes yourself? Are you bringing the team around and getting feedback around the processes? And what does that improvement system really look like for Remode?
Yeah, well, it depends, it depends actually. Obviously, a lot of the improvements I bring on the table myself because I observe the processes and how they are happening, what can be improved, what needs to be improved. But also there's a team, that they are using the processes and they are closest to them. So they also provide their insights. You will always have to update processes because they are always changing, and as the company grows, processes change too. So it's not like you build the process and that's you done for the rest of your life. You actually have to work on it. So yeah, the whole team is involved in that, and I think it's very important to make sure that you keep the people closest to the process part of development of those processes because they know things best.
I agree. Yeah. It's always really interesting to, do a retro after a project and find out, what we think as owners or as leaders, what the process should look like or what we think is best. But really, it's not until we hear from our team, the one that are executing, actually that doesn't work as well as you think it does, or that takes actually way longer, right? There's a better way we can do it. So yeah, definitely believe in bringing and rallying around your people to improve on those. One question I always love to ask is, and you'll know this and appreciate this from your work with ASANA, is when it comes to all the in between, right? Like there's this problem around organizations getting lost in work about work, air quotes. And so that could be trying to find out where that file lives, what the status of that project is, when's that meeting, or where's that client, and there's all this in between stuff that keeps us from actually delivering the work that our clients hire us to do. And so it's this problem that's sucking our time and taking valuable time away from and resources away from the things that we're actually hired to do. Do you have that problem like within Remode, and like what does that look like for you, and how do you combat that within your consultancy?
Yeah, well, inside Remode, we don't really have that problem because from the very beginning, everything was very structured. I think the good part about, us starting the business was that we had a lot of experience already with building process, and we understood the importance of it from the very beginning. And we didn't really have this problem. The team is still small, but everybody knows, where to find information, where things live, because there's structure in Drive, there's structure in Asana, things are organized. But I do understand what you mean, and I think this is probably one of the most common problems that a lot of companies face. But that's where, as I say, the communication is very important. Communicate upfront, train your people. Good training, I think this is something that many companies struggle with, from huge corporations to startups. They forget that the training is important. So if you train your people up front, explain them where things are placed, I don't think there's going to be this huge problem somewhere down the line, that they are struggling to find something, or something gets missed, something gets misplaced, or etc. So I think good training is important from the very beginning.
I love that. And on that train of thought, when you go into a new agency and you're talking with a new client or new prospect, what do you think is the one thing that, they're not considering when it comes to process improvement, documentation? What are the opportunities there? And what's one thing that you always want to make sure that you communicate to them?
Well, one of the first things that we always see is that there's a lot of still communication happening on Slack, let's say, or Messenger. We even seen happening on Messenger. So I think one thing that is missing is a good platform to manage the work that's happening. And, in our case, that's Asana, but it can be other Monday.com or Trello, whatever you choose. But that's what I realized, that it's still missing, or they have it because it kind of became like a trend to use Asana or Monday.com. There's lots of AdWords on YouTube, etc. But I still see that, they have it, but they don't use it. So that's like the biggest probably problem that I see. And obviously, there's a lot of management things happening too. But from the systems perspective, I would say they have a platform that they don't use, and they still communicate and spend a lot of time on Slack.
Okay. So in that, is it the underutilization of the tool that's the biggest problem, or is it that shiny object syndrome where Monday is very in everyone's face, we see it all the time, right? And then are they jumping from platform to platform and thus not using them, or is it that they have one and they're simply not understanding how to structure it properly?
I would say it's a mix. The reason why you get Monday is probably a shiny syndrome, because you see an ad and you're like, that's what I need, because if I get it, the moment I put my credit card details, that's going to solve my problems. But in reality, you get it, but you actually have to implement it. And to implement it, you need to know how to do it. So it's a mix. It's you're chasing the shiny object, but you're also missing the knowledge. And to be honest, this is actually what we had with the agency that I started with, the digital marketing agency. We also had Asana. We didn't know, it wasn't the shiny object syndrome that we got it in the first place. We were just researching and we found that Asana is probably the best one to go with at that particular moment. But we had it and we didn't know how to use it for quite some time, I would say, like good 4 or 5 months. And then we got consultations from actually Bastian. That's how I met Bastian. And, then things became much clearer that, this is actually how you have to go about it. And it just changed the daily life of the agency.
Awesome. And Bastian's incredible. Yeah, it was great having him on earlier in the series. As we're talking about, tech and software here, I just want to close it out. And I always love to ask, what does your tech stack look like? We've talked about Asana, we've talked about Drive. What else, gets you through your day as far as productivity software goes?
Okay, so Asana, Slack, Drive. The next one, as I mentioned, is Marco Polo that I use for communications, and Loom. Well, it's kind of the two things that go kind of replacing each other, because I use Loom when I need to record a screen, but I use Marco Polo when I just need to leave a message. I usually use Notes, like Apple Notes, simple ones. It's brilliant place for me to put all the the ideas that I have. Obviously I use Asana for that too, but Notes is usually for like more detailed concepts. And I would say that's it, to be honest. If you're talking about the platforms that I use, or you're talking more all about the setting, like desk setting too?
I'm talking just platforms, just like what are those go-to tools that you need to kind of get through and do your work. But I think that covered it, unless there's any others.
And obviously Zoom, I forgot to mention Zoom, which is a place for meetings.
Couldn't get away without using Zoom. Awesome. So Erika, thanks for being on the show. Where can people connect with you? If you can give us your website, do you spend time on Twitter? Are you on LinkedIn? Where are you hanging out these days?
Well, actually, I'm on all the platforms, I guess, at this stage. But you can always check our website, remode.company. You can also check my profile on LinkedIn. I share a lot of content, and I do that regularly. So if you want to learn more about backend operations, check Erika Zeigyte, difficult surname. But, obviously, if you have any questions, you can just drop a message under the podcast, under the episode. And also Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You'll with this name, you'll find myself everywhere.
Perfect. That's awesome. And all of the links will be in the show notes as always. Awesome. I want to thank you again, Erika, for being on the show. This is an awesome conversation. I'm looking forward to connecting again in the future.
Thank you for having me. It was nice being here. Bye
for now. If you like what you heard today, please like, subscribe, and follow on your preferred channel. If you know of a friend or colleague that would benefit from hearing this conversation, please share it with them so that we can reach more listeners just like you. As always, all the links from today's talk will be in the show notes. And remember, if it isn't documented, it didn't happen. We'll see you next time.